The dawn of agriculture, the ripple effect of the first seed. Okay, I want you to imagine for a second that we're transported all the way back to 10,000 BC. There are no farms, no grocery stores, and absolutely no permanent homes. Today, in this explainer, we're going to jump right into the exact moment humanity decided to change all of that. Okay, let's dive into this. When and how did humans actually start growing crops? Well, to really grasp the sheer magnitude of this shift, we kind of have to understand the perilous reality of the hunter-gatherer era. Foraging and hunting might sound chaotic, and sure, early nomads actually enjoyed a lot more leisure time than the farmers who eventually replaced them, but their next meal? Totally dependent on whatever unpredictable food nature happened to provide that day. It was a completely reactive way of life, right up until something incredible altered our trajectory as a species forever. For thousands of years, humans lived this completely reactive existence, just taking whatever nature offered. But then, we see this massive psychological and physical paradigm shift. Instead of endlessly wandering and chasing food, we made the absolute game-changing decision to stay in one place and force the food to come to us. This single monumental pivot from gathering whatever was available to actively controlling our food supply became the literal bedrock of modern human existence. Historians call this massive transition the Neolithic Revolution, an epic-making shift that kicked off around 10,000 BC. Now, it didn't just happen everywhere all at once. The seeds of agriculture were first sown in very specific regions naturally primed for cultivation, like the incredibly resource-rich Fertile Crescent in the Middle East. These nutrient-packed pockets were just teeming with the wild ancestors of modern crops, like wild wheat and barley, acting as the perfect natural incubators for the very first seeds of agriculture. It effectively drew a line in the sand of human history. But the actual mechanics of how they pulled this off is a fascinating story of sheer human grit and ingenuity. It started out with literally back-breaking manual labor. We're talking about using basic sticks and stones to claw into the earth just to make room for a seed. Then came this brilliant realization. Clearing out existing vegetation and burning it left behind ash that acted as a super powerful natural fertilizer, the famous slash-and-burn technique. And finally, they made this massive leap in logic with selective breeding. Early farmers showed immense generational patience, observing and actively choosing to plant seeds only from the crops that gave the biggest yields or tasted the best. That's exactly how they slowly transformed wild, stringy grasses like teosinte into the plump ears of corn we'd actually recognize today. And this brilliantly illustrates the ultimate game changer, crop domestication. By breeding plants to be reliable, humans essentially guaranteed a steady food supply. I mean, imagine the profound relief of finally knowing exactly where your next meal is coming from. But it also brought a heavy new burden. Interestingly enough, early farming actually led to a temporary drop in human health and height because diets were suddenly much less varied. Survival was now permanently tethered to a single, localized patch of dirt. Humans essentially traded the freedom of the nomadic lifestyle for permanence, laying the physical foundations for the very first permanent villages, like the ancient settlements of Jericho and Çatalhöyük. While domestication was a huge first step, as historians often point out, the real revolution came with the advent of irrigation systems and plows. Think about it. Early farming was basically a high-stakes gamble with the weather. If it didn't rain, your crops died and your village starved. But ancient river valley civilizations completely rewrote the rules of the game. By engineering elaborate canals to divert water directly from massive rivers straight into their fields, they removed that gamble entirely. This unbelievable level of innovation freed early farmers from their reliance on unpredictable skies and allowed them to scale up food production massively. Once food production became highly reliable, the societal dominoes started falling with incredible speed. First came explosive population growth. A huge surplus of calories meant those early settlements quickly blossomed into the world's first bustling cities. And with enough food to go around, people were suddenly free to focus on specialized labor, which spurred the earliest forms of trade and complex economies. But here's the absolute most mind-blowing ripple effect of all: written language. The greatest intellectual leap of mankind wasn't invented to write poetry. No, it was born out of pure necessity. It was created to act as an ancient spreadsheet, just to keep track of massive grain surpluses and complex trade deals. Let's move to and see how this builds across the timeline, because this evolution certainly didn't stop in the ancient world. The foundation laid by a few humans wielding sticks and stones back in 10,000 BC forms an unbroken chain of ingenuity. From the elaborate canals of those ancient river valley civilizations all the way to the highly complex, mechanized global agricultural systems we rely on today, it's a direct, undeniable progression. The impulse to control our environment has simply scaled up century after century to the point where it now drives the economies of modern nations worldwide. Just take a second to let the sheer scale of this modern reality sink in. Billions. Today, agriculture doesn't just put food on our plates, it actively employs billions of people. It is the fundamental engine facilitating all global trade. And to truly grasp the massive footprint of this 10,000-year-old invention, consider this. Right now, roughly half of all the habitable land on planet Earth is used for agriculture. Those very first experimental attempts to control the food supply have quite literally scaled up to physically reshape our globe. Which brings us to a final, pretty thought-provoking question. How does a 10,000-year-old invention continue to secretly dictate the structure of your daily life today? Well, every time you walk into a grocery store, every time you type out a text message using written language, or even just navigate the grid-like streets of your city, you are experiencing the ongoing, undeniable ripple effect of that very first harvest. The Neolithic Revolution isn't just dusty ancient history. It is the living, breathing blueprint of our modern world. Thank you so much for exploring this explainer with me today. Keep asking questions, keep looking closely at the world around you, and I'll catch you next time.